Dipti is here as well today. Of course, we're still talking about those Dutch elections, aren't we, Dipti? You've been looking at the Dutch papers for us to start with.
That's right, Stuart. Let's look at some of those headlines in the Netherlands. And that makes three. The Telegraph says the centre-right Mark Rutte has scored a third term in office. Now, the incumbent leader held the populists at bay. That's what De Volkskrant says. In particular, he held at bay Geert Wilders and his far-right Party for Freedom, which has risen in popularity in the last months. Now, Wilders may have lost, but his rise is definitely part of a trend we're seeing across Europe, Stuart. This is the trend of the rise of the far-right in Europe. And this cartoon from the London-based Al Arabi paper really sort of sums it up. You see this so-called ring of fire of European far-right leaders.
And you found a piece in Politico, haven't you, which is saying that actually the battle for Mark Rutte is just beginning.
Well, his party actually lost a quarter of its seats in Parliament, yet they still managed to win. But Rutte does need to form a solid coalition now, which might have to include a, quote, leftish party. He's a centre-right candidate, and ironically, his campaign was helped by that diplomatic spat with Turkey. That's what Politico says, because until then, the elections were lacking a narrative. I quote, finally, the boring Dutch election had a story, and Rutte could appeal to voters who were tempted by the populist discourse.
And the Dutch paper is also looking at some of those challenges ahead for Rutte and the rest of the party too.
That's right. Challenges for the centre-right, but also the Labour Party. Columnist Martin Sommer says in Die Volkskrant that, well, the Labour Party was crushed in this election. And he also makes mention of, quote, Rutte fatigue. Rutte has been in power since 2010, Stuart, and his challenge now will be convincing Dutch voters who want change that he is a candidate for change, that he's capable of renewing himself, if you like. The writer also says that a victory for the far-right leader Wilders could have also helped Marine Le Pen's campaign here in France. The National Front leader, for her part, gave an hour-long radio interview to Nigel Farage on Wednesday. She faced very few tough questions, The Guardian says, but she did reiterate her stance on Brexit, thanking the UK for, quote, showing us the way out of this huge prison, referring to the EU. She did not talk about allegations of financial impropriety surrounding her family and her party, but she did lash out at the British Prime Minister Theresa May, who she says did not meet with her. May, for her part, has cited a government policy for not meeting with Marine Le Pen.
OK, let's move on to a completely different story now. We're going to go to the US. Donald Trump set to unveil his budget today. We were just talking about that with Anka. A few winners, it appears.
Very few. In fact, Stuart, just a handful of winners. It's mainly a budget for losers. The only winners will be Homeland Security, Veteran Affairs, and the Defense budget. All three departments are set to get a boost in funding. Defense will go up, for instance, by 10%. Now, as you see in the New York Times, everyone else is a big sore loser. The environment and state programs in particular, they want to cut research to climate change. You see here, the environment will lose up to over a third of its funding. That's huge. Justice, health, the arts, urban development, transport, they're all going to see their budgets shrink.
Something totally different. We're going to take you to Morocco. A bit of a political storm brewing there. This is after the king fired the Prime Minister.
Well, it's actually quite an exceptional move that the king did fire the Prime Minister. The website Maroc Hebdo, a French-language website, explains the situation. Abdelak Ben Kiran was fired by the king just about 6 months after he was elected, Stuart. Ben Kiran failed to form a coalition government, and the king apparently got tired of waiting. The country's sort of been in this political stalemate ever since its elections last October. The ruling government has not formed a coalition, and as a result, it's impacted things like the country's budget for 2017 and sort of stagnated public spending, if you like.
Bit of sport. Monaco keeping their Champions League hopes alive.
That's right. Let's look at a few sports front pages. Manchester City stunned by Monaco, The Guardian says. The team were dumped out of Champions League after a 3-1 victory that went to Monaco. Now, the Telegraph has a very heartbreaking front page. Agony for Pep, it says, with a very heartbreaking picture there of the Manchester City coach. His Monaco gamble, the paper says, backfired, image that no doubt Paris Saint-Germain supporters could relate to as well.
I think they probably could. Now, finally, from Dipsy, a new study has asked British men and women as well to rank life events on the scale of stressfulness. And it's actually yielded some pretty shocking results here, hasn't it?
Definitely, results you would not expect. This study from the Physiological Society has been widely reported in the British press. It asked 2,000 men and women to rank life events that cause them stress. Topping the study was pretty predictable, the death of a loved one, followed by prison, and then flood or fire causing damage to your house. But Brits are more worried about house damage and prison than they are about being seriously ill. That's the fourth reason. They're also more worried about being fired from their jobs than they are about the birth of a child. Even stranger, it turns out that losing your cell phone is almost as stressful as a terror attack.
No, come on.
There you are. Number
Really?
13, terrorist threat. Number 14, losing your cell phone.
I think that's probably slightly squee-whiff. I'm just going to check my pockets, though, to make sure that I know where mine
panic.
is. Yeah, exactly. Don't panic. Thank you, Dipsy. Dipsy with the papers and Anka with business here on France 24. Don't go away in the next half hour of the programme. Focus, of course. Today, how workplaces are dealing with the question of religion in the workplace. That after a French centre-right politician said one of the reasons a huge car plant on the outskirts of Paris was shut down was religion, particularly Islam. Highly controversial comment, of course. We're going to talk about that in Focus.